I want to thank one of our incredible sponsors, BrainTap. You may have listened to our podcast with the founder of BrainTap, Patrick Porter. And if you did, you'll definitely want to get involved in BrainTap. And if you didn't, please, I strongly recommend that you go back and listen. It's so incredibly informative. Here's what BrainTap can do. You can literally build your brain fitness with BrainTap's mobile app and wearable headset. Everyone here at Outcomes the Sun podcast has had and continues to have positive results with BrainTap. Your brain is guided from awake and reactionary patterns to intuitive and creative responses. BrainTap is backed by neuroscience and research and was developed by Patrick Porter himself. BrainTap creates a symphony of brainwave activity to optimize your brain's potential, restore your ability, balance your energy, and calm your brain. And listen, it is a game changer when it comes to sleep. This technology is truly a gift, and I am so incredibly grateful to be able to share it with you.
Hi everyone, I'm Mariel Hemingway, as you know, and my partner, Melissa Yamaguchi, is with me. Out comes the Sun podcast. We are on episode, help me, I don't even know, 14? Maybe 14. I think it's 14. Anyway, could be. We have a wonderful guest today. I'm super excited about this because he's become a very close friend, and we are doing some really kind of cool work in the world of behavioral health here in Idaho. So I'm going to throw it to you, Melissa, because you're the reason that I met this wonderful person, Chris Smith, who you're going to get to meet. And so I'm going to throw it to you, Melissa, because you were the introduction.
You know, by osmosis, we're all connected, right? So initially, I received a reach out from a beautiful person by the name of Adrienne Swain, who's the president of the mission. What is it? The Mission Critical events. And Adrienne and I began talking about different options of having you involved, Mariel, and what they were doing. And as she and I became more involved in our conversation, I really enjoyed Adrienne, loved who she was. Our personalities clicked beautifully. She said, "Oh, I should introduce you to my husband, Chris." And I said, "Okay." And I said, "This sounds great. What does Chris do?" "Oh, he is the director of strategic communications for Optum Idaho." And I said, "Oh, fantastic." So Chris and I began to speak, and therein lies the introduction on how Mariel and Chris and Optum Idaho, Hello Idaho, began to work together. And it's been a lovely marriage. I feel almost like a business yentl.
It's so true. I mean, didn't we?
Yes.
I mean, we really did come together, and it's great. Okay, so you know, all of you out there who are listening, Idaho may seem like the smallest state on the planet. Is actually not. I think Rhode Island is much smaller. It's actually a very big state, but we have some very big behavioral health issues in the state, which I know is happening all over the country. But what Optum Idaho has done is really significant. I think that so what Chris and I have kind of partnered to do is I make these little kind of public service announcements for the local television station about behavioral health, but giving tips like real life, real doable things that you could do, you know, in your everyday life. You know, it's not about talking about medication, but it's talking about getting help and realizing that you're not alone. So that's when this marriage came together. So that's been super, it's been really rewarding. We've been doing it now for a year. And we just did a speaking engagement in Boise, Idaho, it was attended in person, but also online. And that was super fun and I think successful. You can tell us, Chris, if it was. And so talk to me about really what you are doing in behavioral health with Hello Idaho, because you're not an insurance company, but you are. Well, tell us what you're doing and how you're doing it, because I really think that what you're doing is profound and needs to be done all across the country. And by the way, I'm available for all of it. Just so you know. Okay.
Absolutely.
That was
absolutely.
for Billy.
So yeah.
No.
No, but it's true. Like you started at the beginning, Mariel. I mean, we kind of joke. Yeah, Idaho is actually one small town with a long main street, and Idaho's probably what 3 degrees of separation because my wife Adrian and you met. We always go to Wagon Days every year. That is in your neck of the woods, Ketchum, Idaho.
Yes.
Largest, I think, the largest only horse-drawn, horse-powered parade in the country. One of the many things that the Sun
It is one
Valley,
of the
Wood River
greatest. It
Valley
is one
has
of
to
the
brag.
greatest parades you've ever seen in America. It's so
Yes,
cool.
yes.
It's the only parade I've ever gone to that I actually was like, damn, this is fun. Anyway, go on.
No, and you are always sort of an honorary grand marshal. You work each side of Sun Valley Drive, and I think Adrian saw you and had heard you speak at another event in Boise. Went up and just started talking to you, and you ended up sitting with us and all of our friends on the grass while we watched the hockey team in rollerblades pick up behind all those horses. So what a bonding experience, right? But yeah, then as things evolve, and again, as every other boomer male, when you say, that's Mariel Hemingway, it's like, wow, I read all of her grandfather's books. And I even threw down another card and said, I even sailed to Cuba and had drinks with your grandfather's boat captain, Gregorio Fuentes, who, as you know,
So
was
cool.
one of the influences for Old Man in the Sea. So, and again, I can remember I'm Idaho native, and at a very young age, probably in my 20s, I remember going and visiting the grave of your grandfather in Ketchum, which is really a very inspirational place. And the Hemingways are just part of the Idaho fabric of our culture. And what a treat that we were able to partner with you and leverage your lived experience for helping others, promoting health and hope across Idaho. And it is more than just a PSA. You're being very modest, but we work with Mariel to record these short video announcements, ads. They not only run on all the TV stations in Idaho, they run digitally across any streaming platform that people in Idaho are watching, whether it's Hulu or ESPN Sports. They get inserted on top of those. If you go to a YouTube video and you're in Idaho and you meet, you're kind of in this bandwidth of people we know who are interested in tips for mental health, mental wellness, better living, healthier eating, which is pretty much everybody. You're going to see Mariel talking about, just like she said, Hello Idaho, which is our website that has tons of do-it-yourself resources. And then again, too, the power of your story is just amazing. We had Mariel hosted her at our Optum Idaho conference last weekend in Boise, and absolutely, it was the by far highest attended in-person and virtual session of the entire 2-day conference. And the feedback that I saw, everybody does an online sort of like customer satisfaction survey they get, and overwhelmingly people praise your vulnerability. They praise that you are very open in explaining that people have to take some level of responsibility for their own health, mental and physical, and they have to find what's right for them. And it's not a one size fits all. And that's kind of what we're working on with the mental health care system. And Optum is part of United Health Group. Optum is a health services company. In my flavor of Optum, it's behavioral health services. When people say that, it's like, well, that's mental health. That's also substance use addiction treatment. And in Idaho, we have about 400,000 Medicaid members who are eligible for those services. But we believe in helping every family, every individual, every community, one at a time, even with just awareness. And we can talk some more about some of the pandemic and how that's affected it. But what a treat it's been to have a partnership with you and Melissa and the Mariel Hemingway Foundation. And I know anecdotally, just by going around Idaho, people they really appreciate that you share your story, that you're inspiring people and encouraging them to live a healthier, better life.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Very nice. I was very worried about that feedback. I was like, uh-oh, what are they going to say? But no, it's such a well, there's something about doing something in your home state, like it's like your territory. It always feels right. And I always feel like I'm talking to family members, when I'm speaking. I don't know what it is, and I feel like they all know me. So, like, the cat's out of the bag. Like, everybody knows. But it's profound that you have taken this state and this message in a way that I think is accessible. Like, I don't see anybody in the field of behavioral health or insurance or whatever. I don't see them really doing it in a tangible way. Like, everything seems very challenging. And that's why Melissa and I got together. We were like, we need to create an app. We need to create something. Let's start with a podcast, and then let's try to raise some money so that we can create real things. And then, I think what's been exciting is about the development of this relationship, because I think that we both see that even though it's just Idaho, it's not just Idaho. Like, there's an expansion.
Right,
And
right.
by the way, I did not know that I was like at the beginning of anything in Idaho on Hulu or YouTube. I'm very excited about that. Wow, who knew?
Oh yeah, no.
I feel like
one
I'm
of
a
the
big
things that
star.
No, yeah, you. So Idaho is a state of about 1.8 million impressions, and I think so far through 2022, and that would be through the third quarter, which probably would have been the end of October. I'm sorry, end of September. When we have a dashboard that shows all the engagements on all those things. With the world as it is now, we can track how many people click an ad that you're on or your face is on and go in. Even how many people complete a video on a platform
Wow.
that they can skip. And you have very high click-throughs, Mariel, and very high
Oh
video
my God.
completion rates. I mean, we're
That's
talking in
awesome.
like 98%. And so also
Wow.
too, we look at when I said 1.8 million people, I think we're running with your messaging. You've already logged over like 20 million impressions, and that's broadcast and digital. So if you think of that,
That's super cool.
you could probably run for office in Idaho. No,
I could, and I
it's
probably
political
won't.
season here. Yeah, good girl, good girl. It's
I
political
probably
season, and
won't. Although
a lot
Melissa
of
could
political ads
probably.
on.
Melissa is a good. Anyway, we'll talk politics another day. But she's my
Definitely.
pulse to what's going on in the world. So thank God for her and her brain, because it's extraordinary. But wow, I didn't know those things. That's incredible. Melissa, yeah, I know you have some questions for Chris that will
Well, one
take
is
us
that
down the road of mental health.
I wanted you to really, first of all, thank you for sharing that information about
Yes.
Mariel's work, because it's important for us as a team to know. We know that she's going to do well, but knowing that how it's landing and in effect is so important for us as a team. So thank you. And
Yeah.
she's our star. So I wanted to talk about something that you and I've spoken about in the past, and you've mentioned this, and I don't say this cavalierly, but you had said, our job is to protect the mental health of kids. And you said something after you shared that with me that I loved. I didn't love it, but it immediately hit me. You said Mariel has spoken in the past about this Hemingway curse and how she was damn determined to ensure that if it was going to be broken, that she was going to do it. She put the power back in her own hands, right? But then you said to me right after that, you said, but now what we're going to be experiencing is what we know is the COVID curse. And I'd really like for you to expand on that.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I am not a clinician, nor do I play one on podcasts, but I think we all as parents, and as just as adults, we recognize that what has happened over the past couple of years has had a dramatic effect on this generation. So in December, the U.S. Surgeon General declared that youth mental health is a crisis right now. And the data is just, and it's not just Idaho. In Idaho, the suicide rate for youth has jumped up dramatically. But again, we're lucky. United Health Group, Optum is, and our sister company is United Healthcare, which is an insurance company. We're a health service provider. And United Health Group, the United Health Foundation, and a company, entire company, we have put protecting youth mental health as one of our biggest priorities, if not our biggest priorities. We formed a national task force across the entire enterprise, and we're trying to look at the ways of how are we going to better address what is going on. And, it's not just the pandemic. The pandemic exacerbated a situation that was already bad. And, when Mariel was in Boise last week shooting the latest round of commercials, she talks about it. All of us live in a world right now where there is economic uncertainty. There is divisiveness over politics. There is a geopolitical warfare going on. There is ongoing unrest over social justice, race relations. And on top of it, as Marielle says, a pandemic that doesn't seem to end. So yeah, it's not just youth, it is adults. We all have gone through a lot, and we are going to go through a lot. But what we're seeing with young people is that this is going to become there's a term clinicians use, an adverse childhood experience, an ACE, for this entire generation. And as a healthcare provider and an insurance company, United Health Group, we've made a commitment to do the research and start at the ground up. And that included doing extensive interviews with over 80 young adults, teens and young adults, some of whom have a mental health diagnosis, others who don't, and just asking some really fundamental questions and trying to understand that what they're going through is different than what me in my generational era grew up with. I mean, I remember graduating from high school and the AIDS epidemic was going on, and it's like, wow,
Right.
So much for that romantic side of life, because it was scary. And you had the Cold War, Reagan, Gorbachev, all that.
Right.
And we always think the generations after us have it a lot easier than we did. It's not necessarily true. We need to start listening to kids more and not taking our preconceived notions into those conversations. And that's what we're trying to do as a company.
100%. Yeah, sorry.
I love that you're doing that.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, the children in LA Unified staged a walkout. And I've talked about this before in one of our podcasts. They staged a big walkout, and the kids were crying out for help in their high schools for counselors to help them deal with mental health issues during COVID. And whatever was happening, these kids felt lost. And the one thing, when they were gathered and some of the community leaders were saying, what is it you want? The one resounding thing they kept saying was, we want someone to listen to us. Yeah. And the fact that Optum Idaho has taken that extra measure to identify these kids and say, we're here, we're listening, please, is massive. It's massive. Yeah.
Well, I love that you brought that up, Melissa, because when I talked in my talk last week, I talk about listening. It was one of my grandfather's biggest things. People don't listen. Mm-hmm. People don't listen. I mean, it's typical. It's human nature. We think we're listening, but it's always like, what am I going to say? How am I going to chime in? I'm probably the worst offender, but I try to be a good listener, because I think listening has become a lost art, and kids know when you don't listen. I mean, my kids are, throughout their childhood, they were always like, if I was on the phone, they knew that I was like on set, not paying attention. They'd be like, Mom, you're not listening. And, and they were hurt, because kids are very vulnerable to that sense of being pushed aside, to pretend that they know, right? Kids need to be heard, especially now when the world is kind of, also the social media is kind of fake, right? So it's fake listening, it's fake stories, it's fake this, it's fake that. Not all of it, but a lot of it is so just like, it's fabricated. It's just not, it's not real. And so their sense of reality and their sense of real feelings really, it's just critical that we listen to them. And you were saying that you have a platform that you were doing throughout Idaho where you're going to talk to kids in different kind of having a what do you call it, a kind of a roundtable discussion with
Yeah,
kids.
yeah.
And they were really being super honest and open about the fact that they felt isolated, they felt unheard. And I found that so interesting.
Hmm.
Anyway, go
Yeah.
ahead, Melissa. I know you have
No,
another
no,
question, but
well, I'll just expand on
oh,
what
go
Mariel's
ahead,
talking
please.
about, because yeah, we did an event in a community in Idaho a couple of weeks ago. We were a co-sponsor of it with a nonprofit called the Idaho Resiliency Project, and the event was called "What I Wish You Knew," and it was a group of 7 kids who agreed to get on a stage in a high school auditorium in front of parents and teachers and counselors and say, hey, here's what I wish you knew about what I'm struggling with. Because, like I say, those of us from different generations, we grew up in an era where people
Wow.
said, nobody said I'm depressed. Be like, oh, suck it up. Come on.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah,
don't talk about that.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
Marielle, I know, knows, she lived it, and her sisters, et cetera, and her family, but so it's not just in Idaho. So across the country, United Health Group and this National Task Force, we basically are recognizing that this generation is coming of age among some major, major global shifts. Like I've said,
yeah,
we have the fall of trusted institutions. In our day, you could trust the media. I mean, I'm a recovering journalist. I don't even really trust the media that much. And of course, social media,
I know.
bets are off. I mean, like I mentioned, social justice, political divide, economic volatility, geopolitical warfare. These young people are creating their own approach to how they're going to approach their life. And some of the things I'm going to just notice, I guess, some highlights from some of these early responses that they've aggregated through these extensive interviews they've done all around the country with kids is kids. This generation runs in small circles with few close relationships, and they have relationships with people who validate their feelings and behaviors, and they're hesitant to share too much and become a burden, especially to their parents. They don't really come to us and say, hey, I'm struggling with this, but by gosh, they're more than happy to talk to their friends about it. If a mother would tell another mother, hey, my son's in counseling, he's doing really good, that son probably would not want to ever speak to her again. But he
Right.
is more than happy to tell his friends, like, I just graduated to the next level in my therapy. So it's a different approach.
Yeah,
They consistently.
you had brought. I don't mean to interrupt, but we had talked
No, go
about
ahead.
this, that kids nowadays are really like, kids have counselors. Like, that's a thing. Like, when I was a kid, I mean, that shit didn't happen. Excuse me, excuse my language, but it
Absolutely.
just
No,
No,
didn't
it's
no.
true.
happen, right? You didn't.
It's true.
That was like, oh, and if your
You didn't
parents
talk
found
about
out,
it.
you did not talk about it. But now kids are like, and they're very much more open to the conversation that they're having with,
Yeah.
with a counselor, and they want to have that conversation, but not with their parents. And that's heartbreaking as a parent, but my god, at least there, that window, that door is
Yeah.
open to them. That's
Well,
Yeah.
huge.
there's I recently sat next to a doctor who was telling me that he, in dealing with a certain subset of culture, that the parents really didn't want to hear about their children not being mentally well. They didn't want to
Yeah,
hear about that. They didn't want any labels. They didn't want any acronyms attached to their kids, because they had dreams for their children. And so what they've been started doing, the approach they took was to switch it to say, we're here to help the brain health, to help and Mariel, I was saying this to you, Chris, when you and I have talked before, Mariel's big push has always been about mental wellness. And instead of really stigmatizing, because when we're all roughly in the same age, when I was growing up, I mean, I knew there were kids that were hyper, but we didn't have all the different lettering, which I know it's much more progressed in what they're discovering
Mm-hmm.
about people. But if you would talk about mental illness or therapy as readily as you would talk about an STD, you were terrified of that label. There was a
Yeah.
terrifying fear about it, right? So no, everyone pushed it away. And you're right. I have children that are soon to be 21 and just turned 23, and they have friends that say, "Oh yeah, well, I'm bipolar, and and they are very open and candid
Very
about it."
open. Yep.
but their parents do not want them talking about it for fear of what people
Yes.
will.
Yeah, and that's a generational
Yes.
thing. It's very interesting
Yeah.
too that they they um they they talk about being not sure. Well, I'm erasing that. I'm going forward to a different thing because I think that we are able to have a conversation about mental health now, and kids can own a diagnosis, quote unquote,
Hmm.
because I think that we are starting to understand that that doesn't mean that you can't be a part of society. I think what was the problem in the past
Right.
is that mental health, if you are called mentally ill or you got a label of bipolar, depressed, or whatever it was, then all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden, you can't go to work. You
Yeah.
won't have a job. You
You're
won't
not
get
going
a
to get a
job. You have
job.
no future.
That's right.
You can't get
Yep.
married.
Yep.
Like in our mind goes into these places like, oh my God, how do you function? How will you function in the real world? And the truth is,
Yeah.
kids are understanding that mental health, and I think they understand the taking responsibility even more so than people older, right? We
Hmm.
need
Yeah.
they understand that it's like, okay, own this. I think they're just not
Hmm.
educated on the lifestyle things that they could do,
Sure.
you know?
Sure.
Oh yeah.
Well, and you
Oh
you
yeah.
nailed it, Marielle, when you talked about just having a conversation. That's the fundamental thing about Hello Idaho. We just want to say, how are you doing? But as you guys know, as parents, having a conversation with your kid, how was your day? Fine. So what was like the best part of it? I don't know. But I got to tell you, if this is your life, I've got an app for that. So if you just go to the website, Optum Conversation, we have a special website and it's really easy to use. Optum, Optum, conversation.com. This is a digital set of basically what are flashcards, what are basically cue cards to parents to say, ask this question. And it also gives you
So
some
cool.
talking points to build on that. And you can download it to your phone, and it's going to help get over that nothing's going on with me. They're really good questions that, frankly, we've been trying to develop in talking with kids. It's like, well, how do we get you to tell us what you wish we knew?
I love
Absolutely.
this.
This is so great, and it's so
So
true
smart.
that the questions are imperative. Finding the right kinds of questions that you'll get a truthful answer to. Like
Exactly.
it's asking the right questions. It's not, and the problem with other organizations is the questions are so kind of blanketed and they seem so foreign. So you have to come in at their level. You got to meet them where they are, right?
Yep. Exactly.
You
You
know what
got
I
it.
love about what Optum Idaho is doing is that there's no perfect manual to being a human. There's no perfect manual to being a husband or a wife or a parent, and especially in the sea of learning about our health, whether it's mental, emotional, or physical, is the landscape is changing faster than a lot of us can keep up with. And so we can't, no man is an island, right? We cannot rely solely on ourselves. Yes, we have congregations of communities, whether it's our churches or it's our sewing club or whatever it is. But Optum Idaho, I really love this approach you're taking about community and connection and rising tides lift all boats. We're here
Yeah.
together. This is a
Yeah,
vital and important message that we talk about at Mariel Hemingway Foundation all the time. We're in this together, whether we choose to close an eye to it or not. We're still in this together.
absolutely. Can I
Absolutely. And
just say
again,
something
we're
funny? I have
so
to say
aligned
something
with
funny.
with
'Cause- Oh, never mind. I just have to point out that Melissa, you brought up a sewing club. I just have to say, what?
I
Sorry.
brought up a what?
A sewing club. I was like,
Brought up a
wait,
what?
a sewing club or your sewing club? I was like, wait a
Well,
second, sorry.
down in the South, we got quilts to make.
I'm sorry, I had to just bring that up. Anyway, go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
no. I was going to say that this is why we all get along so well, and we all are aligned on. It's not
Yeah.
just one thing. It takes an entire community. Marielle talks a lot about all the things in her journey that she tried that
Mhm.
didn't work for her. Not to say they don't work for somebody else, But that's sort of access and help and quality, because again, there are some things that
Yes.
like you talk about, Marielle. Hey, here's the pill that is going to cure suicide. We know that there's not a one ring to rule them all. It's going to take an entire community becoming aware, becoming compassionate, and learning how
Yes.
to help. I mean, in Idaho, one thing we do is we sponsor mental health first aid training for anybody over the age of 18 wants it. And it's a CPR-like class that helps people
Oh my
respond
God. It's
and recognize
fantastic.
when somebody's starting in a crisis and how they can help as a community. We got parents coming in, we got teachers, we got first responders. And what if we had, and this is one thing we're looking at as the bigger company, not just in Idaho, but what if we helped encourage that nationally? What if we had kind of a
Yes.
Yeah.
service corps of people who were EMTs for mental health? Not to say that EMTs can't help, and they so many of them come forward in Idaho to get this training, because as well as I do, you don't know what to do sometimes. Like, what do I say? Is this do I
Yes.
just turn and walk away? Or can I do something to help de-escalate it
Yes.
and then make sure they get the care they need? So there's a lot going on here, and I think it's really awesome that the foundation is able to partner with Optum and vice versa, because we all know that this is not going to go away. Even when
No.
the pandemic that never ends maybe goes away, this is an ongoing thing, and we've got to focus on our
Yes.
kids, because they really are the future for our society.
Absolutely. Well, we have reached our 30-minute limit on our podcast, but you know what's so great is that we have partnered together, and we're going to move into doing some podcasts with Optum Idaho, so that we're going to have some of those conversations with some of those kids in the community,
Hmm.
and expand those conversations out so that more of the country can see them, to see what's in the heads of kids all over the place, because I think even one slice of Idaho is going to represent everybody, across the country, if not the world. So it's just so
Yep.
important, and I'm so grateful to have this relationship with you, and grateful to Melissa for making it happen. Daisy is whining. Sorry. Hi.
I think that Optum Idaho needs to have a message that goes out to the rest of the world that says, if you only knew what we know, because you now have learned it from your kids.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about this. I think this, you're doing so many great things with Optum Idaho, and Mariel partnering up with you was just a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. I would like to go ahead and pat myself on the back, Chris. You and I and Adrian should really all go pat ourselves on the back, but it really didn't take a lot of metadata here to this was a beautiful marriage, and so thank you for that. Thank
Yeah.
you for being a part of what we're
Absolutely.
doing. We would like, I know that I speak on behalf of Mariel and me, we would love to have you back as Optum Idaho is continuing to do all these exciting things that we'd love to be able to share across the platform. Please, Chris, just get comfortable in that chair and come back.
Yes, please do.
Okay.
So grateful to you, Chris. Awesome. Daisy says
Absolutely.
thank
Thank
you
you
so
guys for
much.
having me, and look forward to continuing to work with you all. It's awesome.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Out Comes the Sun. You can listen to our podcast on Spotify, on Apple, and on YouTube. And you can donate to the Mariel Hemingway Foundation at the MarielHemingwayFoundation.org. And I want to spell Hemingway for you, HEMINGWAY.org. I only say that because a lot of people put two M's, and that just won't work. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, you can go to the donate button at the bottom, and it will take you right to a link with the QR code. And if you go to marielhemingway.org, you can also press the donate button and be able to donate to the foundation, which is designed to help guide people towards finding the right solutions for their mental health issues. That is my goal. I'm just trying to raise money so I can come up with an app and a website that has all the information you could possibly want to know about mental health and where to go. But we are in the process of making that happen, and your donation means so much to us. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.